He was intoxicated. There was a deep horizontal cut on his wrist close to his palm, and his sister, who called 911, stated that he had a gun and he's looking to die by suicide by cop. I was the third on scene behind my sergeant and one other officer. They were standing before an approximately 40-year-old male who was unsteady on his feet, slurring his speech and carrying an open, half-empty bottle of beer in his left hand. The only information that I got from dispatch is that we've had a history at this address, and the subject suffered from mental illness. His name was Billy. The sergeant was speaking to him. It sounded like he knew him, and the second officer was standing at a 90-degree angle in relation to the sergeant, with his gun hip turned away and his arms crossed. This was a textbook contact cover position, of course, minus the crossed arms. I stood in the shadows, in the distance, observing the situation with my body camera activated and my gun at the low ready. I observed a black revolver-type handgun in his waistband. I don't think the other officers saw it. And I know that Billy didn't know I was there. Billy's eyes were locked on the second officer, still standing there with his arms crossed, and he said, "I'm going to die tonight, and you're going to be the one that does it." I took a step forward out of the shadow cast by the front porch light, and this startled Billy. In a calm tone, with my gun now reholstered, and one hand in the air, I said, "My name is Dave, and I'm sorry if I scared you." With his guard down, the sergeant and second officer were able to get the gun out of his waistband and secure it. He was lowered into a gray metal folding chair that was on the front porch, and, he was physically defeated, but he remained uncooperative with his words. At this point, it was just a matter of convincing him to go to the ambulance that was waiting at the end of the driveway without a struggle. After speaking with him for a while, I knelt down in order to get on his level, and he calmed. I learned a lot about his life and how he got there, and he said that there was absolutely nothing that anybody in this world could do for him. He told me that something happened at work that triggered him. He came home, got drunk, and remained that way for 2 days. This was the start of the negative feedback loop that ended with me kneeling down next to him on his doorstep. Wearing gloves, I eventually got the confidence to reach out and hold his hand. I told him that I was concerned about the cut on his wrist because his movements were beginning to reopen it. I promised him that I wasn't going to force him to do anything. We talked for about an hour as the ambulance waited at the end of the driveway. I gave him time. I treated him with respect. As officers, we learn a lot about defensive and offensive tactics, how and where to stand so that we don't create friendly crossfire. We have to assess the presence of weapons, and we have to know our surroundings. These skills are critical. But often, as cops, we can lose touch with why we started in the first place. With endless traumatic experiences, it breeds cynicism. We all start because we want to help people. While holding his bloody wrist, Billy and I eventually started walking down the driveway. And right before stepping up into the ambulance, he stopped and he looked at me. And he tilted his head and just kind of trying to figure me out. And right before he stepped up and got onto the stretcher, he said, "You actually give a shit, don't you?" I decided from day one on this job that I was going to incorporate compassion and kindness into my approach. This has always been a part of who I am, and it's always served me well. I just want to support people. Over the course of my career as a police officer, I've worn many hats. I spent some time as a school resource officer. I'm a crisis negotiator. And, sometimes those two things can seem like they're the same thing. But, I used to give a talk to sixth graders, and I used to ask them, I want you to tell me who you think Officer Dave was in the sixth grade. And if you can imagine, it took a little while for them to speak up because I'm standing there in this uniform and they don't know me. Or maybe they've seen me at a fire drill or something. It's intimidating. I get it. I'm under no illusion that everyone out there loves me or the police for that matter. Eventually, one of the class clowns would step up and say something like I was a loser or a nerd. And most of the kids, though, they would use words like brave or athletic or really good at school or stood up for people. Most of them were wrong. I was bullied. I was really quiet. I didn't play sports, and I absolutely hated school. I was made fun of my Kmart shoes and my hand-me-down clothes. I was sad. I was awkward. I had a crooked smile, and unfortunately, I allowed that to make me an easy target. I allowed that to make me an easy target. And like Billy and countless others I've been called to protect over the years, I know what it's like to be an outsider. I want to acknowledge the fact that some of you may be experiencing a little bit of dissonance right now as you see and hear this police officer up here talking about kindness. Just like the sixth graders, part of my intention here is to help relieve that dissonance and let you know that we do exist. And I, like you, am hopeful for a future that has room for more of us. I remember the first time I was on the phone as a crisis negotiator. This man, he was violating a protective order against his wife. He had threatened to kill her, and he barricaded himself in the house and refused to come out. With the SWAT team surrounding the house and me and my team on the phone, we were able to safely convince him to come out, completely without incident. It doesn't always go that way. Sometimes the force is necessary, but not always. So how do we make room for compassion and kindness in policing without sacrificing safety? How do you become good at both? I think the answer is simple. If you become proficient in your physical defense tactics and use of force tools, this creates space for compassion. Tony Robbins is a life coach and self-help author who specializes in helping people break through their negative behavioral patterns. His analogy is great. I love using this because, we all live in a world where we're responsible for so many things, and how do you manage that? He calls it chunking. He uses the example of learning how to drive. If you think about when you were first learning how to drive, right? You have to think about the steering wheel and the brake pedal and the gas pedal and the blinker and the wipers and the guy over here and the people in the back seat and everybody driving around you. It's crazy. It's scary. Think about when you're learning how to parallel park. I mean, maybe you're still learning how to parallel park, but I just think about if there's people in the car and there's talking and the radio is on, you got to shut that down, right? You need quiet. Any other stimulus can be crippling. So eventually, if you practice it, right, maybe you'll practice today after this talk, you get good at it. Not because you're able to think of many things at once, because all of those many different things chunk together and they become automated. If we get really good at all aspects of being a cop, just like the tactical and defensive aspects of being a cop, eventually it just becomes like driving. It allows you to put your concentration to other things, like these so-called soft tactics, like compassion. Eventually, you can redefine what it means to be a cop altogether. The answer is more frequent and higher quality training in all aspects of use of force, de-escalation, and building rapport. This is going to require adjustments to the hiring process, our selection process, greater resources, but most of all, a desire to change. I can tell you that I'm not alone in this way of thinking, but what if we had more cops that thought this way? I want to share one more story that, though it's anecdotal, it's given me all the proof that I need for this theory. This was recent. I arrested a woman named Anna for shoplifting. The name was familiar, but the face was not. Anna is a person who suffers from an addiction to fentanyl. And she was hungry. She was caught stealing food. As I began to enter her information into the booking system, a previous record came up, and I asked her, "Do you remember me?" And she just kind of looks at me. Apparently, I had arrested her 11 years ago. And I could almost see this light bulb go off in her head. And she said, "Oh my God, I've been wondering who you were for years. I just wanted to thank you. You know, something that you said, I was clean for 7 years because of it." And that was all it took for me to have that light bulb go off and remember exactly who she was. Anna was actually one of my first arrests after getting out of the police academy. Again, she was shoplifting, caught stealing food, and her boyfriend literally left her holding the bag as he ran away. She was in her early 20s, and she seemed pretty put together for somebody so far down, so I was curious. I asked her, I said, "What got you into this? What happened?" And she told me that both of her parents had died of drug overdoses. She was going to do everything she could to make sure that that life was not hers. She wanted to make something of herself. She had a master's degree in forensic psychology. She had a great job. She was doing really well in life. And she got into a car accident. And of course, poor pain management. And 40 pills a day got expensive really quick. And if you think about this, $400 a day compared to $10 a day with heroin. Her photo ID showed a beautiful young woman, and she had almost become unrecognizable. As I accompanied her to the hospital because she was having some violent withdrawal symptoms, I asked her, "What happened to that girl in the license photo?" She cried, and it was hard. She didn't say anything, and I had no idea at the time that the impact of those words. But that was what changed her life for the next 7 years. 7 years she was clean. That is until she got back together with her boyfriend, the one that ran away that day 11 years ago. Police officers have a very unique opportunity in society, and I have no delusions of grandeur here, but how many other people have I potentially affected over the years? I have no idea, and I will never know. But that thought is enough to keep me doing what I'm doing. There are things in our lives that hurt us or bring us down, and there are things in this world that help us realize the potential that has been there all along. I am a firm believer in individual responsibility, but without a doubt, we rise together. I believe that all humans should have a chance to feel heard, even in their darkest days. Even in their darkest days. I want to acknowledge that sometimes there is no time to listen, depending on the imminence or severity of the crime. I need to make that clear for the sake of officer safety. But hear me when I say that it often only takes one person in someone's life to make a difference. So ask yourself, what kind of person do you want to be? Do you want to be the one that brings them up or the one that brings them down? Because both doors are always open. Which choice are you going to make space for? And which choice do you want your police officers to make?